Welcome, everybody. Excited to see some familiar faces. We have quite a few folks registered for today, so we're just going to let a few moments to make sure we get everybody in. Go ahead and settle in with a beverage or just kind of get cozy. We'll be here together for a while. Some of you may have received a link that may be renaming you to Alana Powell, my colleague. So if that is you, just double check your name and just sort that out. As much as we love Alana, there is only one of her. So.
Hi, everyone. So great to see you. Oh my gosh, I'm just getting excited. I feel like I know so many people in this space. So it's always so nice to see friends, also to meet new friends. Really excited that you're all here. Bienvenidos. Estamos súper emocionadas que ustedes están aquí. Este espacio no está bilingüe, pero ojalá que ustedes que necesitan transiciones al español, por favor, contáctame. So this will not be a bilingual session, but if you do need Spanish interpretation or translation, please feel free to reach out to me and we can fill you in after the event. And we will also be talking a little bit about our Partnership for Excellence event at the end of today's session, which will be interpreted into Spanish. So just want to put that out there as well. And thank you all so much for being here today.
Yeah, we still have some folks trickling in, but I think we can probably slowly get started here. We have I think well over 100 folks that had registered for this event. So we just want to give everyone a chance to pop in. One other just housekeeping note I want to flag is we are recording this session to be shared later with our sector for folks who aren't able to attend today, and just to be able to create this sort of evergreen place for people to reflect back on and revisit for the conversation. So if you would prefer not to be recorded, you're welcome to turn off your camera. And if you don't mind showing us your beautiful face to live on the internet forever, you can feel free to keep it on. But so hi, everybody. Again, super excited to see all the familiar faces. I see a lot of folks from the Making Movement series. So that feels like a really, cool continuation from that conversation that we had with the fund. My name, for those that don't know, is Miley Schoonover. I'm a community manager with the Nonprofit Resource Network. And I'm also a communications and marketing lead at LOACOM, which is a marketing and movement-based agency that is the operating wheel behind NPRN. And I'm just really excited because we have this opportunity to partner with the fund to bring you the second part of the series that is centering on a conversation around the CCREI and just a conversation about equity in our sector at large. For those that aren't familiar with it, NPRN is our digital hub within the nonprofit sector where you can post jobs and your press releases and upcoming events, and is really just a great space for you to interact with your other colleagues in the sector and find resources. So if you haven't spent a lot of time on the platform recently, if you're maybe just a newsletter reader, I highly encourage you to check out some of the newer upgrades that we've made on the website. Make sure your organization has filled out their profile so we can learn more about you and the great work that you all are doing. And again, that's nprnsb.org. Definitely feel free to hit me up or my colleague, Alana Powell, who's another community manager at NPRN, if you have any questions. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Kathleen.
Great. Thank you so much, Miley and Alana and the NPRN team. Hi, everyone. My name is Kathleen Knight, pronouns she, Aya, and I'm the capacity building manager with the Fund for Santa Barbara. And I've also been pretty involved this past year on launching our Central Coast Regional Equity Initiative, and just really excited, again, to see so many familiar faces and so many new friends as well, and particularly excited that we're joined by some really incredible community leaders today. which we'll have the opportunity to meet in a moment here, but that includes Stanley Sankov from the Santa Barbara Tenants Union, Irene Kelly from Women's Economic Ventures, Vanessa Bechtel from Ventura County Community Foundation, as well as Nadia Bushanov from Santa Barbara County Action Network. So we'll get a chance to meet them in a moment here, but would just love to jump into our kind of orientation and grounding for our conversation today. So I'm just going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. So we're here together today as our part 2 on working together for transformative change, which is co-hosted by the Fund for Santa Barbara and the Nonprofit Resource Network. And we had an engagement event in May, and so some of you may have attended that, and this is part 2 that you're coming to. Some of you may be joining for the first time today. Either way, we're so glad you're here, and just wanted to take a moment to ground this conversation in what we'll be chatting about and centering our work in today. So that is the Central Coast Regional Equity Initiative. And this initiative aims to deepen our understanding of regional disparities, facilitate a region-wide multi-sectoral conversation, and advance social, health, environmental, and economic equity through a community and research-informed action framework. Now, this initiative is guided by a regional vision of equity, one that acknowledges our shared history, our socioeconomic integration and interdependence, and our long and growing history of bi-county activism. Now, initially, the report and the initiative was focused in Ventura County and Santa Barbara counties, but this work actually has expanded to San Luis Obispo County to really truly encompass a Central Coast region, as well as to honor the ancestral lands of the Chumash and Tataviam people, who are the original inhabitants and stewards of this region in the Central Coast. Or what we now call the Central Coast today. Now, this framework for the Regional Equity Initiative is drawn from a framework and data that's presented in a report entitled Towards a Just and Equitable Central Coast, or as some of you may know, we've also been calling it the Central Coast Regional Equity Study. And so if you were with us last time, you had the opportunity to learn a bit more about the key findings from this report, and to dive into some of the data on inequity, as well as the framework that's presented in the report. And just to give you a very, very brief snapshot into what is in this report, this really speaks to the intersectional issues and framing of the data, and speaks to a narrative and manifestation of deep-rooted inequity within Santa Barbara County and Ventura counties. So I really encourage you to visit the Central Coast Regional Equity Initiative website, where you'll find the full report, as well as an executive summary, much shorter than the actual report. But it really does bring forth this data behind a story of deep inequity within our region. Now, the initiative itself, born out of the data that was presented within this study, also this initiative is guided by some principles and priorities for research and action. And this is a community-informed framework that helps us form a collective vision for equity, as well as a narrative by which we can draw from to support our own work within equity, no matter what we're doing. If you're a direct service organization, an organizer, an advocacy organization, or a philanthropic funder, we all have a role to play in advancing equity within the Central Coast. And so these principles and priorities, and I'm going to go through them a little bit quickly, but I will send the link to the slides or drop that in the chat for the discussion so that you can pull those up to reference. But these principles and priorities include: 1, respecting the rights and experiences of Indigenous people. Number 2, center equity and justice as foundational economic values. Number 3, invest in inclusive, universally accessible infrastructures of opportunity and social provision. Number 4, advance racial and intersectional justice. Number 5, recognize, respect, and protect immigrant rights, civic integration, and political voice. Number 6, protect tenants, preserve communities, and make housing affordable for all. Number 7, be a leader in environmental and climate justice. Number 8, bridge digital divides for underserved communities. Number 9, create platforms for collaborative, community-engaged equity research. Number 10, build from our victories. And number 11, open avenues to participatory democracy. So again, this is our community-informed framework that helps us start to work towards equity and to transform our region towards one that's more equitable. Now, if you were with us last time in May, we asked you these questions. What do you need in order to advance or start to advance equity in the work you are engaged in? What would you like to see in the next report? Or what would be helpful for you? As well as, what are your thoughts on what an intersectional equity movement in our region looks like? Now, today, we're going to be hearing and engaging in conversation with 4 truly incredible community leaders who are actively working to advance equity in their subsector in the nonprofit landscape in the Central Coast. This includes Nadia Abushanab from Santa Barbara County Action Network, Vanessa Bechtel from Ventura County Community Foundation, Stanley Sankov from Santa Barbara, and Irene Kelly from Women's Economic Ventures. And without further ado, I would love to pass it on over to our panelists for today to give a little introduction to themselves and to the work that they're engaged in. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that it feels a bit more like a conversation. And I'll go ahead and pass it on over to Nadia to introduce yourself and your organization.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kathleen. And hi, everyone. It's so great to be here with you all virtually. Yeah, my name is Nadia Abushanab. I am the Advocacy and Events Director for SBCAN, the Santa Barbara County Action Network. For 20 years, SBCAN has been promoting environmental, social, and economic justice throughout Santa Barbara County, as well as incorporating efforts across the North and South County. In recent years, we've successfully fought against different dangerous oil projects that would have disproportionately impacted frontline communities. And we support and advocate for affordable housing projects throughout the county, like the People's Self-Help Housing Project at the old Santa Maria Highway Drive-In. We led an economic justice coalition that pursued a minimum wage increase, and we successfully pushed for hero pay for grocery and drugstore employees during the pandemic. SBCAN is also the convener of the Sustainable University Now Coalition, or SUN Coalition, which is dedicated to holding UCSB accountable to produce sufficient housing for its increasing student and faculty population, which we know has contributed significantly to the housing crisis along the South Coast, and that has trickled into the whole rest of the county and surrounding regions as well. We work on a lot of different projects, but I'll just mention 2 more that I think are relevant here today. So we've been supporting other efforts such as the Central Coast Climate Justice Network's Green New Deal campaign, and that's really important to me personally. And of course, Cause's rent stabilization campaign to win rent increase limits within the city and hopefully beyond that as well. So I'll leave it there. And yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much, Nadia. So glad you're here and just always really inspired to hear about the work that SBCAN's doing. I'd now like to pass it on over to Vanessa Bechtel with Ventura County Community Foundation.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. It's just such a gift to be here with all of you today. I want to just share, we, Ventura County Community Foundation, and I saw Rubai with the Santa Barbara Foundation. We are your regional community foundations, your local community foundations. And I just want to give a shout out to 2 colleagues of mine who I also know are here, Jeff Lambert, our Chief Operating Officer, and then Thanya Thiep, who is Yim. She goes also by Yim. She's our International Fellow, and she's from Thailand, part of a international fellowship with the US government. Her specialty is human trafficking and the rights of the child. And she's here to do some work on our early childhood education initiative, and we're learning a lot from her. I just wanted to give a shout out to my colleagues, but we are your community foundation for Ventura County. And if you ask anyone what is a community foundation, I always say we're here. We are inspired and committed to a thriving community inspired by growing generosity. And basically, we're here to help amplify and lift up a lot of the wonderful work that you are all doing, and also engage in community leadership. We serve as a philanthropic consulting office and community leadership, and they kind of meet at the middle. We work with individual donors and their families to help them fulfill their philanthropic intentions and really make sure that they're having the impact that they hope to have on our shared world. And then on the community leadership, we're a partner with the 2020 census, COVID-19 pandemic, recent wildfires. We have been honored to participate in helping raise funds for the 805 Undocu Fund, Farm Worker Household Assistance Program. We have an early childhood education initiative, scholarship program, caregiving initiative. We're working on gun violence prevention. Just really, we're here committed like you all to equity in our region and doing all we can to help. We invite you, if you don't have a relationship with your community foundation, we want one with you, and I'll be putting my information in the chat right now. But thank you again, Kathleen, for inviting me to be here with you today.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, for being here. And I love your imagery of what VCCF does for our community. Definitely a vital community resource in Ventura County, and just truly an incredible partner here in Santa Barbara County as well. So thank you so much for being here. And I'd love to now introduce Irene Kelly with Women's Economic Ventures.
Thank you, Kathleen, and thank you to everyone that is here. It's a pleasure and an honor to share this space with all of you. As Kathleen said, my name is Irene Kelly. I'm the Financial Education and Community Engagement Manager at WEAVE, or Women's Economic Ventures. And for those of you that don't know WEAVE, WEAVE is a nonprofit organization that has been serving women and entrepreneurs in the counties of Ventura and Santa Barbara for over 30 years. We are a women business center, and we are also a community development financial institution. And although we focus on women, we serve people of all gender identities. We focus on creating a just and equitable society through the economic empowerment of women. And we support women and entrepreneurs through 3 different pillars. We have our access to capital pillar. We also have our education pillar and training solutions. And we also have our advisory and coaching pillar. So we try to provide more holistic solutions. And we're going to be talking about that in a minute. But it's just a pleasure for me to be here. And for WEAVE, it has been key to connect with different organizations. We believe that we are stronger together. And it's just an honor to be here in this space. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Irene. I'm so glad that you're here as well. And also just really want to elevate too that WEAVE works both in Santa Barbara County and Ventura County, which I think is just pretty incredible for an organization to do in terms of, really understanding the landscape throughout a larger region within the Central Coast. So thanks so much for being here, Irene. And I'd love to introduce Stanley Zankov with Santa Barbara Tenants Union.
Hello, everybody. It's so exciting to see so many folks in this space, and thanks so much for the invite. I'm here to share a little bit about the Santa Barbara Tenants Union. So SBTU is an all-volunteer tenant-led union. We were born out of the early days of the pandemic, and we are dedicated to defending tenants in Santa Barbara County, primarily South County, against unjust evictions, rent increases, and negligent and abusive landlords. Union members provide each other and other tenants education, solidarity, mutual support, all in our vision to make housing a human right. We're relatively new, we're relatively small, and we're figuring things out as we go along, excuse me. But so far, we've been doing this work by providing regular tenants' rights education and strategy consultations through our weekly tenant help desk. This is probably the core of our work. It's surprisingly where we get the most outreach these days. And we also provide tenants rights and organizing workshops. We answer our tenant hotline and regular email inquiries. We follow organizing leads in multi-unit buildings. We knock on doors. And We have a few tenant associations, so folks who are in the same apartment building. We've helped some groups get organized and formally create a tenants association. And then we also support political lobbying and advocacy with other organizations like SBCAN, like CAUSE, the League of Women Voters, who have been doing this work for quite a while and working coalition with folks. Thank you so much for the invite.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, Stanley. Stanley just has really been an incredible community organizer here in Santa Barbara County and is involved on many different projects with different organizations. Also want to give a special shout out to, because Stanley worked for the Fund for Santa Barbara previously and really put in a lot of hard work for the regional equity study to even make this conversation possible today. It's been years in the making. So also just want to elevate that as well, Stanley. And thank you for being here. And thank you so much to all of our panelists for being here and for all of our community members as well. We're coming together here in the spirit of working together for transformative change and really in the space to envision what would it look like and what would it take to move towards a just and equitable future here in the Central Coast. And I would argue too, not even just future, but a present as well. So just want to thank you all so much for being here today. It always just feels really nice to be in community from folks from all over the Central Coast and involved with all sorts of different interesting work within our community. So we'll go ahead now and we're going to move into a panel discussion with our phenomenal panelists here. This idea to have a discussion really came from the fact that each of these panelists really are deeply involved in equity work within their organizations and within their diverse sectors. We've got a philanthropic funding organization here, direct service provider, as well as advocacy and organizing organizations, and just really want to emphasize, that there is, whether you think so or not, or have worked deeply within it or not, there really is a place for equity to be a part of the work that we're doing all throughout the region, all throughout our subsectors within the nonprofit sector. And our four panelists today really have taken initiative to be community leaders in this equity work and really are actively working towards transformative change. So just excited that we get to sit down and have a conversation and kind of dive into the work that they're doing. And really, we hope after this conversation today and this engagement event that you walk away from the conversation, whether you've worked on equity for a long time or you're just starting off, that you have an opportunity to reflect and to meet other people within the sector and kind of think about how some of this equity work might reflect in your organization as well. And I think, one of the great things about doing this work is that, if you're working on a small part of the piece, you're working on the entire puzzle. And I think that is really in the spirit of working together for transformative change. It's really going to take, effort on all of our parts and sort of rethinking our organizations, our approaches, our institutions to really move towards a just and equitable future here on the Central Coast. So would love to dive into our panel discussion and starting off with understanding the equity within the work of all of the panelists' organizations here today. And so the question I would love to pose to our panelists is, how has the Central Coast Regional Equity Initiative deepened the equity work in your organization is already engaged in? Or how did this initiative and idea of equity influence new commitments to equity in your work? And I'll go ahead and just open it up to whoever would like to jump in and answer that.
Yeah, I can start. So I think I was thinking about the study specifically, and I think that really having the data and the numbers from the study, it really gives fodder to the work that is already being done and to the experiences that we're already seeing within the community. It's like it's just that validation of like, look, this is real. This is what we're hearing from our community, and it's actually true. The numbers line up, and here's the data to prove it. And for something like the rent stabilization campaign, we're finding that that is really important, as there's a lot of misinformation going around about what the impacts of a policy like that would be, about the need for a policy like that in the first place. And, you know, for people who think in that way and who have those values, it's important to be able to counter those oppressive arguments with the facts and the data. Like one of the stats that always stands out to me is that Santa Barbara County is the 5th least affordable county in the state. And I don't think anyone here is necessarily surprised by that. We already knew that, but to see it confirmed in like the data, it just can't be argued against. And yeah, it's not acceptable. And I think it helps kind of bring people on board who need that sort of numbers centered argument.
You know, I couldn't agree more, Nadia, thank you. And, you know, I began my morning today thinking a lot about Carmen Ramirez, who is a local hero, a dear friend of mine, and impacted the lives of thousands and thousands. But of course, whenever I think of Carmen, I always am struck by just her tremendous leadership in the community. And she was a woman of just purpose. And I think as I look at the people who are here today on this call, we're all united with a shared purpose. Every single one of us is working on equity and justice. So we're among our family. And I think it's really important to just recognize, you know, number one, we're really lucky and fortunate to be united on a shared purpose. Nietzsche, reminded me of Nietzsche this morning, who says that he who has a why to live for can endure any how. And in this work, obviously there's going to be setbacks, but as long as we can remember that we have that purpose, we'll persevere. And so as we think about our why and, you know, why we're here, I was just taken back to the launch, Kathleen, back in the spring when, you know, Dr. Manuel Pastor was speaking. I was just really struck by access to information and that being so key, quite frankly, to some of the principles, right, that we're talking about, especially in investing in inclusive, universally accepted infrastructure and opportunities for social provision and open avenues to participatory democracy. Well, that is rooted absolutely in access to information and trusted information. Ventura County used to have a paper for every 6,700 residents, and now it's over one paper for every 68,000 residents. When I started at the foundation, our local paper had 10 editors, and in January, 10 and a half total employees, right, that were full-time. So one of the ways since the report came out that we've been really struck to take action is really helping to get access to local trusted information. And so I'm really pleased to report that we have funded, because of one of our generous anonymous donors, we've been able to fund 2 positions for the Ventura County Star, full-time positions. They're watchdog fellows. They're experienced journalists. This is a multi-year commitment, the first of which was just brought on. And I think her first piece is going to be coming out this week. But really, I think what struck me back in April was just the fact that how can we collectively take action if we don't have access to the same information? And that makes this report so important. It also makes local journalism even more important. And I just want to add one last comment on this. You begin the report by reimagining. Reimagining is the very first word. And I think that's what we have an opportunity to collectively do here. We have the opportunity to reimagine, and that's going to require us flipping our orthodoxies. You know, journalism, local journalism was traditionally funded by sponsorships, ads. It's not working. And it requires a new way of thinking. And we can either be frustrated by that change, or we can collectively take action together and reimagine how we can best ensure that we have that type of gateway into our communities, and it's truly accessible. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Kathleen.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. And go ahead and jump in, Irene.
Yes, I'm just so excited because it's right in line with what we've been feeling at Weave. And to Vanessa's point, to Nadia's point, I think the equity study has brought a lot of clarity, accountability, and hope to the work we do. Hope in the sense of look at this wonderful group of people together working towards the same mission like Vanessa was sharing. And in regards to clarity and accountability, I would like to share a little more of how the initiative has shifted our work, to put it in a way. I think it's rare to find data that explores the intersectionality of the communities we serve. And ultimately, the challenges we're experiencing from the economic equity perspective cannot be addressed without that piece. So this study really brought light to how we need to prioritize our work. And it also brought this sense of urgency in regards to who are the communities that have been most marginalized and how can we join efforts to support them, right? To me, the study was yelling, how are we going to elevate women of color in our community, right? And it felt like it helped us going from a place where we're operating within our own silo. How can we not operate from the dark, but operate from this place where we understand the actual state of our community, our economy, and we prioritize our programs and services based on the level of need we see. And it also helped us identify how this journey, for it to be sustainable, it needs to start from within our organizations. So how are we promoting equity within our own teams, right? Within our own processes. So it really helped us, again, with those pieces, right? Clarity, accountability, and hope.
I just want to echo, I mean, everything that was said so far, I definitely resonate with. And I think this issue of intersectionality is really important, right? It's probably no surprise to anybody on this call that issues of housing precarity are also issues of environment. They're also informed by issues like documentation status or immigration status or language access or digital divide, right? So all these different topics that the equity study lays out so wonderfully is helpful, and especially considering that at least for SBTU we're volunteer run, so we might understand that concept, we might see it, our members might know it through their lived experience, but drafting something like talking points or applying to grant funding where we slowly started to, it's really tough to get that sort of data to kind of sprinkle into these narratives. I had a professor one time say that data is kind of like seasoning. Like you definitely need it, but you can also have too much of it. I think she was really elevating the point of the narrative, the personal storytelling, and that's another piece of this that I think is really powerful, in that the equity study is framing and centering equity in a really wonderfully powerful way. And it also has maybe unintended or maybe a secondary impact of connecting people together, especially when none of this work is stuff we can do alone, right? We shouldn't be. So for us, I think it's really given us kind of like what Nadia was saying, it's given us some of the facts and figures to back up what most of the people we work with already know about things like rent burden, et cetera. But it's a way for us to push back on people who weaponize data to kind of like subvert things like passing rent control or tenant protections. But it's also a validating sort of bit of insight for people to see that they're not alone, that they're struggling to pay for their rent, for example. So it's been really nice to see how you all have been balancing data and the narrative really well. Appreciating that as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stanley, and all of our panelists too. And I think you bring up just, an important point of, okay, the data that is there and leveraging that for your own organization, whatever issue areas you're working within. And as Irene mentioned, and Stanley as well, the intersectionality, I think, is really apparent within the report, within the initiative, and would encourage all of our participants here today to go through the regional equity study. We have an extended executive summary as well as the report. So I just really encourage you to look through that. There's a wide wealth of information. I'll also drop this in the chat here too, but I have been meeting with different organizations to walk through the report with you and say, okay, and this was specifically within our grant our grant funding cycle here at the fund. But if anybody's interested in just meeting and going over it together and kind of looking at what direction to go in, I can definitely be a resource and happy to do that. You can book some time, but because it can be a bit of an overwhelming document. So we really just want it to be, you know, really accessible and to be a resource to leverage for funding. You know, as Stanley said, there's, you know, a lot of times like weaponization of data as well. So how are we using it to meet our missions, to expand our programming, and to advance equity work? So thank you so much all for your just really wonderful insights. And I'd love to turn it over to my colleague Alana at NPRN to ask our next question.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathleen. And another thank you to our participants or our panelists, I would say, for those awesome answers. The next question that we want to ask is, what has been the biggest learning experience? And what are some of those aha moments you've experienced when working in the equity field? Open to whoever wants to jump in with some thoughts.
I think I'm thinking a lot recently. I know Vanessa, you mentioned Carmen Ramirez, and I think a lot of her approach and legacy has been really bringing people along. For those of you that knew her, she would bring people along individually, right? She would be a mentor to people, but also in our little ecosystem, she helped build up organizations. She was actually the founding board president of Cause. And so I think this idea of like bringing people along is really important in this work. For SBTU, that's bringing people along, like quite literally in a base building organization, right? It's about getting to know your neighbors, having those conversations where it might not be super exciting or you know, or fun to talk about things like habitability or rent increases, but it's about bringing each other along, and then it's also about working in coalition. I mentioned in some of the lobbying and advocacy work that we do it in coalition. We do it with folks on this call like Linda and Nadia and Cause and a lot of other folks. And there's just no way that we could be tracking legislation, strategizing, or reaching that many people when we do that sort of work. So I think for me, that's been really important. And it's not a new idea, but I'm learning ways that it shows up more and more, right? And then the other thing is, and this is going to be like cheese ball alert, but this is people-centered work, right? It's a fluffy sounding idea, but it's really true, right? It's people's lives and circumstances both help inform the work, but it also impacts it, right? So when you're talking to people with housing precarity and having them volunteer, it can be tough, right? It's inherently tough, right? If people are facing an eviction, to be then showing up to be speaking at public comment or to be following through with meeting their neighbors and organizing, right? So it's people-centered in all the wonderful and complicated ways that it is, right? So those two things stand out for me.
I'm happy to go next. And Stanley, I appreciate your response so much, because one of the things that we are seeing is how we need to bring awareness to the systemic inequities for everyone to do our part, right? Especially when we're talking about economic equity, supporting small businesses, right? Like, where do you shop? We vote with our money, right? So that has been a big learning moment for us, where we identify it's not only about us and our client, it's about our community at large and the role that our community at large has in this equation. Are you paying for wages, right? Are you charging enough for your work, right? Are you seeing that some of the small business owners, they're not charging what they should be charging, right? Like, how can you be a part of the solution, right? That has been one of the kind of that lifelong learning journey that we are in within the equity space. And we're also understanding and sharing more and more that by elevating and empowering communities in need, we're empowering entire communities. So it's not about, oh, you're prioritizing. Of course, we're prioritizing because communities have been left behind, right? So it's about working together to elevate those who have been left behind. And in terms of those aha moments, particularly within my role as a financial education manager, when we're developing financial empowerment programs, it's about partnering with the communities that need this the most, right? What works for you? What type of financial program do you want to be part of, right? How can we make it engaging for you? And one question that I want to bring to this group is, and this came from the data, right? How are you supposed to save money for emergencies if you're not earning enough to pay rent? And you're also being paid less than your counterparts for the same type of work, right? That was an aha moment for our work. And that asking ourselves those tough questions is what's going to bring us, push the agenda forward, because we understand now that it's not only about programs, it's about the wraparound services that people need. It's about policy change. It's about bringing this data, combining with our work, and connecting also, as Stanley brought up, with government officials, right? We need to engage government in the equation, because this should be a public, private, and government partnership. We're all in this together. And if we don't speak up and if we don't bring awareness to our community, we're not going to get the buy-in. So that was one of the big aha moments that we experienced while using the study and helping it understand and inform our work. That has been one of our big aha moments, right? It's time to speak up, because ain't nobody got time to wait 100 years for these systemic inequities to be solved. I'm sorry, ain't nobody got time for that. We need to work together. So that's a little bit or a lot, sorry, but about our aha moments.
Oh my gosh, I love that. You made me laugh, and also I could not agree more. And actually, both you and Stanley, your remarks just really also reminded me that one of my takeaways was, the build from our victories. That's one of the principles, number 10. And I think when I first read that, I was like, yes, that actually does belong there. It's not something that I think is a sector we often think about. We're normally on to the next thing, but building from those victories, I'm remembering, the power behind the collaborative work of the Women's Economic Venture, Weave, Economic Development Collaborative, the County of Ventura. Emily Bernie, I saw you here pounding the pavements in Santa Paula and Fillmore to make sure that businesses knew about the business assistance grants programs. But, I think building from our victories, I think with our collective regional success with the 2020 census, and we don't have an opportunity to see such historic collective action and the impact in the numbers the way that we have seen in our region. Both Santa Barbara, Ventura County, San Luis Obispo, our entire Central Coast actually partnered together in our outreach and education for the 2020 census. And, the results are amazing. In Ventura County, which I know most on top of my head, we were 59th in the nation most at risk of an undercount out of more than 3,000 counties in the nation going into the census. And that was identified by the federal government. We ended up in the 95th percentile nationwide. We were in the top 5%. What does that mean? That means about $2 billion in more social safety net benefits as a region. And we did that together. In fact, if you looked at the money that was supposed to be needed to go into that effort, we were millions and millions of dollars shy. But by coming together and lifting up our networks, we ended up having, 60 million impressions for a $250,000 budget. And that's what we can do, obviously, when we work together. So building from that victory, I think, and obviously there's more work that needs to be done, and 2030 is right around the corner. So let's all get ready. But building from that, going into the business assistance grants, we knew that we needed at least 6 different languages. But it turned out we actually needed translation for 16 different languages. And I, first of all, that was a real aha for me. I think going into the report and reading the report, I realized that, Vanessa, with 16 different languages, you still missed the boat, because there were 19 languages in Ventura County identified, and then another 11,000 people that had other languages other than that. So as we're working to be inclusive, we need to really obviously all think about that. But that was a huge aha for me. And I think we need, to continue to push the envelope at your community foundation so we can do a better job. But that was really powerful. And I think, just speaks to the ability for us to leverage our victories. And the last thing I'll say is, vaccine outreach and education, the group pivoted to do that and redistricting. And based on the data and the statistics, according to the New York Times, over 300 lives were saved in Ventura County statistically from that collective work, which means that 2,700 people are not grieving the loss of a loved one. And a close family member. So we have the power to really take wonderful action when we work together. But anyway, thank you. That was such an uplifting comment. I loved it. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I'm just so struck by what everyone is saying. And I just want to go back to one other, the point that Irene was making about how are you supposed to save any money or prepare for the future if you're spending so much on rent? And I promise SBCAN works on issues other than housing, but sometimes it feels like not so much. But yeah, we focus on housing a lot because it is such a big problem for the region. But there was one point in the report, and I'll be quick, but it said that if renters were not spending more than 30% of their income on rent, there would be an additional $352 million in income that could be returned to the local economy. And that's just Santa Barbara County. So $352 million is basically getting taken away from our communities because the rent is too high or the wages are too low, depending which way you look at it. And I just think that personally was like an aha moment for me of like, what an argument, what a way to advocate for affordable housing and rent stabilization. Like we can say as a community, why are we allowing these landlords and property managers to siphon off this money from our community? Like, why are we okay with all this money going to those places instead of being invested back in our local businesses and ourselves and our communities? So just wanted to quickly say that for all the housing people on here.
Thank you all so much for those answers. I really appreciate the emphasis on, collective work, working with other organizations, tapping into your network, engaging the government, all really, really key points and super helpful insights. I'll pass it on to Miley for our next question.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I just want to echo my colleague Alana, like really just appreciate that emphasis. It kind of comes back to, again, like community and to partnerships. I really appreciate like the note on just sort of like calling people back in and realizing that we all have these lanes and these like roles to play in equity work. And I think Stanley, you made the comment about it being like people-centered work. So of course we need to continue to constantly engage our partners, our people, our communities, our government, and to continue to look out for one another. I really also just love that note about pushing that envelope and celebrating our wins and how that's rooted in our equity study, but celebrating ourselves but then not having it stop there. Like let's acknowledge that and then keep going. So on the note of like keeping it going, this question is more to kind of touch on how we are going to move equity forward. So I'd like to ask our panelists if you can reflect on like what strategies, resources, and partnership approaches that are really important to advancing equity. And it's a two-part question, so we'll have this in the chat. And the second is, how do organizations with varying capacities engage in equity work?
I can jump in. I think a lot of what strikes me in this question is really about the partnerships that I mentioned. Especially my day job, I work at Cause, but they've been doing a lot of this tenants lobbying, advocacy, organizing for 2 decades now, and partnerships like that, partnerships with SBCAN, the League, and other folks have been really, really important. Because if it's just the tenants union showing up at public comment, it's easy to dismiss, right? It's like, oh, that's just one group. In addition to a whole other set of just like learning from one another, right? And supporting each other, not being in it alone. But the other thing that really strikes me is because there's such a huge demand for things like legal services and things of that at the tenants union, we feel this kind of constant pull to be a direct service provider in a way that, again, as a volunteer organization, we can never fully meet the needs of what's out there. And then it's also, if we're not working toward some of that social change work, we're always going to be in this situation, right? If we're not really making sure that people know their rights, or that we're expanding our rights as tenants, or that we're actually getting a rein on rent, or expanding housing production that's actually affordable, we're always going to be in this like endless loop of either losing people who are getting displaced, or people struggling to make ends meet more and more. So I think for us, it's been this very difficult but important balancing act of, for example, making sure to tell people who come to our tenant help desk, hey, so you're a union member, and know that means that you can help your neighbors in the future, right? Once your issue is resolved, or we'll sign you up on our email list or mass texting list, and then we'll notify people about, let's say, a public comment, or we've had one direct action that we had last December, and so it's a little bit of that, keeping front and center the fact that our mission is also about the social change work, not just about direct service provision, even though we get pulled in that direction a lot.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying about working just in coalition and working as multiple organizations working towards the same goal, and it being sort of harder for people to dismiss. I think that is super important. And yeah, SBCAN works almost exclusively in coalition, in various ways. And I think that's really important to not be duplicating labor. A lot of this work is happening already in various places throughout the county. And I think connecting and plugging in and supporting where things are already happening is really important. And really recognizing that like the community members themselves are the experts. Like there are people who can come in with the data and the numbers, but just like trusting the expertise of the people there, who have lived through the experience, whatever it is, and I think for the second part, how do organizations with varying capacities engage in this work? I think that is a huge question and it's a big issue for the spaces that I've been in, especially the Green New Deal. Hold on.
Well, Kathleen, while Nadia is gone, I'll jump in, and then as soon as she comes, oh, Nadia, there you are, you're back. Here you go.
So sorry about that. Yeah, I was just gonna say that it's been an issue with the Green New Deal work, because we want to have these community-centered organizations be the ones sort of at the forefront of decision making and and providing that expertise, but you also don't want to put too much work onto the plates of those people who are most impacted. So yeah, I guess I have this question as well. I don't have a great answer right now, but it is definitely something that I've been thinking about.
I was thinking about partnership, and I was really grateful for an opportunity recently to kind of diagnose some of the success factors that went into the 2020 census work, and just the power of partnerships and setting up collective action. And Ken Saxon and a whole number of wonderful leaders with Leading from Within. Judy, I just want to say I'm so grateful for your feedback on kind of the strategy there. And I think I think about two things. Number one, there's a statistic in the equity study that I just keep coming back to, and it says of the estimated 58 BIPOC-led organizations in the region, the majority have budgets below 15,000, are primarily volunteer-based, and generally fall short of their desired impact, largely due to insufficient philanthropic and capacity building support. Capacity needs include training and consultation on fundraising and strategic planning, and communications, as well as community organizing and policy advocacy. And I was just really moved by the fact that over the last couple of years, over 75 organizations have received grants for the first time from your community foundation. And many of them are not actually even formal organizations yet, but they are the trusted messengers and the representatives of their community, the leaders within our community. And I just really, one of the most beautiful moments for me has been the weekly calls with the census, and then they continued with vaccine outreach and education, where you have all of these different groups and different languages at the table, and you have the promotoras, right, working with the Taxpayers Association, and it's that relationship and that human bond, the authentic connection happening. I just really think that that is a huge key to these partnerships. And I also really believe in the permission-free environment. And I look at the people here today, and I know we're all committed. And I think the success is just recognizing that we share a vision and a mission, and that we can all have the opportunity to do all we can to lift up that vision and mission. And one of the moments for me that was so fun was opening the paper and realizing that there were all these census events, and I hadn't heard of any of them. And I thought that was really the definition of success, right? When it gets so much larger that we can't manage it, it's not a manageable thing, and it shouldn't be. And when we do work like this, it's multidimensional, hitting us on all of these different fronts: housing, environmental issues, climate change, racism. You have all of these dynamics that are facing our community, and we have the opportunity to collectively do something about it. And it's not one issue, and it's not one way. Obviously, it's many, many ways. And I think that that was really the most powerful gift from the census, but also just a reminder in the report that if we can all do as much as we possibly can to generate resources to these 58 organizations and all of the other efforts that are happening throughout the community that aren't organizations yet, I think that is a really wonderful gift we can bring.
I would like to echo everything that my fellow panelists just shared, and particularly a point that Nadia brought about the community is the expert, right? So many times we see the intention of like, I want to support the community, I think you need this, versus saying, I'm going to partner with you, and you are that's true empowerment, really, right? Like partnering with those communities we're trying to support, and they are the ones dictating, hey, I need this, I need that. And if we truly listen, that informs how we shift our programs and services. So some of the strategies that we have implemented are first developing these internal accountability points, right? Where we touch base with our community through focus groups. We identify what's working, what's not working. And we've been doing it in several of our programs. Like we have a program called Emprendimiento, where we support entrepreneurs of color, and they have access to a 6-week training to start their own business, and they get access after that to a grant. And throughout our focus groups, we learned, 6 weeks was not enough. They wanted more content. They also wanted more content around financial literacy. So all of that we learned through creating those points where it's all about listening. It's all about listening and adapting. So that would be one of the examples in terms of strategies. And the other piece is identifying, what are you good at as an organization, right? And what do you need help with? And not reinventing the wheel. Like, for example, in the language justice space, that's where we needed support, right? We needed to connect with organizations to help us develop the structures we needed to serve and celebrate our diverse community. Also, when it comes to the digital divide, right? We are not experts in that. Who are we going to connect with that can help us advance that agenda? So that has some of the strategies that we've been implementing. It's truly about accountability, and also embed these efforts into our DE&I efforts as an organization, right? Having a committee around D&I has also been instrumental, and creating seats at the decision-making tables for the communities we're trying to support, right? They need to be in the decision-making tables. So that's another piece that has been very important for us. And it's just understanding that this is, we're work in progress, right? This is lifelong learning. This is a lifelong process of understanding what we need to tweak to better serve our community and increase access to education, to capital. And lastly, to answer the question of how do organizations with varying capacities engage in equity work, I think it's that combination of knowing what are you good at that you can offer to other nonprofits and other partners, and being open and vulnerable, sharing, this is what I need help with, right? Rather than trying to do everything ourselves, it's about finding the right partnerships. And I think Stanley brought that, the fact of how can we engage in coalition building, for example, right? That's another piece that we're working towards in our financial literacy space, engaging with different sectors that care about financial literacy and working towards how do we make financial literacy accessible for everyone, right? And that includes a public policy piece. And that's why it's all about connecting with other sectors. So if you want to engage in equity work, it's really about where are you at now? Who are you trying to serve? And how do we bridge that? Thank you.
Wow. Yeah. Ivana, that was phenomenal. Yeah. Thank you for that answer, to all of our panelists for those responses. Yeah, just appreciate especially the emphasis on a multidimensional vision of equity. I think I heard you say, Vanessa, it was fantastic. And just the empowerment piece too, and that you like really emphasize, like, you know, that the community is the expert, and like bringing them to like the center, not reinventing the wheel, staying in our lane and pushing forward. That's what it's all about. But yeah, speaking of a shared vision of equity, Kathleen, I'm going to pass back to you for our next question.
Thank you so much, Miley. And yeah, I'm really enjoying this discussion and want to make sure that we have some time to break out with our participants and then come back together for some community wisdom sharing. So just as kind of a closeout question, a final word question, thinking about working together for transformative change and really what transformational equity would look like, would feel like. I think, we, are in a position where we can really imagine that and work towards that. And so, the Central Coast Regional Equity Initiative says that, quote, we hope to help advance a shared regional vision that recognizes the unique struggles and aspirations of the Central Coast peoples and communities. And that, quote, the time for transformative change is now. So I would just like to ask, to close this out, what is your hope or your vision moving forward?
Well, I think, it's thinking about the tenants' rights space, but also I think more beyond that, I think the bottleneck in social change is so often a power imbalance. It's not a lack of like ideas on best practices or policy or legislation. And so I think, as I'm thinking about SBTU, I think, we want to elevate tenant voices, we want to build renter power. It's just not an equal relationship right now between, landlord or tenant, and our whole region is suffering because of it. So, yeah, so I think coming together to kind of right that power imbalance is really important. And I think also kind of the key to taking on whatever challenges come up.
And I just love that comment, Sarah, in the chat, that we need a moral fusion movement. I had never heard those words put together like that. So that's wonderful. Kathleen and Miley, I was thinking about this earlier. And in 2018, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention announced that the lifespan of the average American had declined for the third consecutive year. And of course, since that time, we've had the pandemic, and that situation has gotten worse. But the reason American lives are shorter today, and David Brooks talks a lot about this, is that the increase of the so-called deaths of despair, suicide, drug overdose, liver problems, so forth. And I think, we think about that, that's really caused by social isolation. And I think that has only been exacerbated during the census. So, the pandemic, obviously I keep thinking about the census, but pandemic. So as I think about us as nonprofit leaders, as community leaders, as activists, as people committed to equity, I think it's really up to us to be hopeful and to spread hope and to really keep the dream. And David Luna, who's a dear friend of mine, always says, Vanessa, you guys are the keepers of the dreams. And each one of us in our organizations represents the dreams of hundreds, if not thousands of people who have been here and working on this for generations. And I think we can continue to build on that, but we have to continue to advocate for hope right now more than anything, and the hope for a better future and a better world and a new way of doing things, because it's really through that feeling of hope and a feeling, as much as we can do it as a sector, to create that feeling of safety. Because in order to make the change, the transformational change, we're going to have to change the way that we've been doing things. We're going to have to change our systems, change our thinking, change ourselves, and we're going to have to be ruthless about it, because it's not going to be easy and the challenges seem to just be getting harder. So we're going to have to flip orthodoxies together. And that means challenging conventional wisdom and our unstated assumptions and really taking action. And so if we're going to do this, we have to be the keepers of the dream, and we have to continue to pound the drum that this is not a permanent state. We can change things together, and we see it every day. And I keep coming back to celebrating those wins. But today reminds me of all the great work that's happening out there. So let's keep it up.
Vanessa, I just want to say amen to that. I think this question was very special to me, because if we don't allow ourselves to be hopeful and dream, it's like, what are we doing working this hard, right? So for me, I want to see those numbers, our poverty rates going down. I want to see, when it comes to the question, right, of like, what is my vision moving forward? What is our vision as an economic empowerment organization? Is this piece of course, poverty rates coming down, but how are we moving the needle towards income inequality, right? I want to see a world where we don't have income inequality, right? That's the vision. And the vision is also based on addition, also connecting to what Vanessa brought up about the pandemic. The pandemic brought to light a lot of challenges that we have, particularly with our essential workers, right? People not being valued and essential. Everyone is essential in our economy, right? But if we look deeper, who are the people that are being left behind? So our vision is to bring justice to these communities that are essential to our day-to-day, and elevate bring that upwards economic mobility, elevate their quality of life through the economic opportunities that we should be creating for everyone in the community. So part of our vision is is financial education for all, starting in schools, right? How are we supposed, it's like if you're trying to play a board game and you don't know the rules of the game, how are we supposed to play to start, right? So that vision for us is everyone has access to the basics, and everyone has the support they need along the way to be economically empowered. So that's a little bit about our vision. And in terms of the work together, it's about removing the silos. So the vision is to have more spaces like this amazing space where we can come, we communicate, we know what other sectors are doing, we know what other nonprofits need, we know when we need to plug in, and we also share best practices, because as Vanessa brought up, there's a lot of healing and a lot of change that needs to take place, starting from us as individuals and then bringing it to our organizations. So I see that vision is also, how do we start making healthier environments for all of us to do this great work, so that can have that ripple effect in who we're working with. So that's the vision. Thank you.
Yeah. I echo everything that's been said, and I'll just quickly add, like, yeah, I just feel like there's so much to be done. I think actually Vanessa said on one of our previous calls, she was worried that when she grew up, there wouldn't be any more work for her to do, and she wouldn't know what career she should have because all of these problems would be fixed. So no worries there. Yeah, there's just so much to do. And I think for Santa Barbara County, in my community, loss of housing is really the most imminent threat to our community. It's the most imminent threat to my current way of life, and I really think that we need to come together and change the conversation specifically around housing. I mean, all these issues are intersected and they're all important, but really I think home is the foundation for a lot of this, and really, establishing housing as a basic human right and treating it as such, and not prioritizing it as an investment or as a way to make money for people, but really as a human right. So that would be, yeah, part of my hope or vision for the future.
Wow, thank you all so much. Just appreciate that answer to that question as well. And it was mentioned, but like what does it look like if we envision it and dream it, and then how do we put that into work? So thank you all so much for just lovely insight into all of that. I'm certainly feeling very energized and just very excited to continue doing this work with all of you, panelists, participants, everyone included. Now, our discussion did run a little bit over, but I'm just so glad that we had an opportunity to slow down, take the space and time to dive into conversation like that. I would love to have the opportunity for us to just jump quickly into some breakout rooms. So the idea here is that you as participants can self-select, which panelists you'd like to maybe ask more specific questions to, just because we do have a large group today and want to honor that time. But we'll be taking notes and can share those out. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and open up breakout groups for 10 minutes so that we have a little bit of an opportunity to start building some of those closer relationships together. And then we'll come back together for a quick community wisdom share out before we close and go off into the rest of our days. So, Linda is saying, don't make us choose. They are all great. Yes, I agree, but we'll make sure to share those notes with you. So I'll go ahead and just open these breakout rooms here. So you can self-select, and then we'll be back here in just under 10 minutes. Great. We'll go ahead, keep putting those in here. We'll give it another minute or so. We are coming up on time at 2 p.m. So if you have to jump out, totally understand that. And just want to thank you all so much for being here today. Feel free to keep working on it. I'm just going to share a couple of things in our chat here. The first, which was really inspired to hear that so many of you appreciated this space, and we'd love to be in community together again at the Partnership for Excellence on October 19th. The Regional Equity Initiative will be our discussion point for Partnership for Excellence. It's going to be really hands-on, a community conversation where we'll have a lot more time and space in our breakout groups. And to come together to action plan and actionize around equity. Sarah asks, can we come back every month? You can, not necessarily to this space, but you can stay connected to the Fund for Santa Barbara and Nonprofit Resource Network, where the organizations who've helped to host this today. So would love to see you at our other events. The Fund for Santa Barbara and NPRN both put on just a lot of really phenomenal community events, workshops, facilitate spaces. So please stay connected with us there. You can also find a variety of resources and stay connected with the Central Coast Regional Equity Initiative at centralcoastequity.org, which I'm putting in the chat. And then also just want again, just highlight, shout out our amazing panelists and their organizations today. Nadia Bushnab with Santa Barbara County Action Network, Stanley Sankov with Santa Barbara Tenants Union, Vanessa Bechtel with Ventura County Community Foundation, and Irene Kelly with Women's Economic Ventures. So also encourage you to stay connected with our panelists as well. There was a lot of sentiment today about being in community and really collaborating and working intersectionally, not working in silos. So just really encourage us to use this moment as an opportunity to build relationships, be in conversation with one another, and to reflect on our own perspectives, our own organizations, and think about how we can really work together in this vision for transformational change and working together for transformative equity. So with that, thank you all so much for being here. And yeah, I'll open it up if there's any kind of final words from our panelists and other facilitators here today.
So appreciate you all being here. Thank you all, and especially our panelists. And yeah, hope to see you guys next time in our future events.
And Waleed, I can't tell you how happy it makes me as a gaucho to see UCSB also playing such a huge role in this. It's just so fantastic. So thank you, and to the Fund for Santa Barbara for your leadership on this. It's so appreciated.
Thank you. Yeah, the involvement of UCSB on the report is really encouraging.
Yes, yeah, and a huge shout out to the UCSB Blum Center as well, and USC Equity Research Institute, who made the study possible. And yeah, our goal is for UCSB to really do this community engaged research like what we did in the regional equity study, and for the Blum Center to be a hub for the Central Coast and this kind of community engaged equity research. So I encourage you also to stay connected with the Blum Center. I can put that link in the chat, but yeah, it's going to take a commitment from all of us, from all different sectors, from research and university, the philanthropic sector, the policy and government sector, and just so many others, business sector, community organizing. So just really glad that we can be here together as a nonprofit sector today, as well as representatives from other sectors. And again, just really encourage you to come to PFE on October 19th so we can continue this conversation.
Yeah, Kathleen, we brought that up in the Making Movements. I want to emphasize again how much LOACOM was kind of frustrated with the fact that we don't see very many businesses operating in like this space, or we should be seeing so many more like of these businesses operating in this space. So continuing to commit to like work on that and like engage more of our B Corps to like really just get in it with this nonprofit sector. But
and I wanted to just take a moment. So I wasn't, just to be clear, not to take credit for work that I didn't do. I came on board. I'm a newly appointed associate dean of community engagement in the Division of Social Sciences. But I came on board after the report and was not part of the Blum Center's work. And the Blum Center's been doing incredible work for a long time. So it's more about appreciating you all incorporating UCSB and recognizing we at UCSB have a long ways to go. So I was appreciative to see your collaboration with the Blum Center and their involvement therein. But if anyone has any sort of feedback, or I'm going to be taking the first few months to really reach out to community organizations and to community members to just listen. And so please reach out to me at all if interested in chatting about how UCSB can do better.
Thank you all so much. Enjoy your afternoon.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you so
everybody.
much, everyone. Have a great
Thanks so
afternoon.
much, Kathleen.
Thank you so much, Nadia.
Bye.
Muchas gracias. Thank you all. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Good